Hi writerly friends, and welcome back to another world building video. Are you ready to talk fantasy? Because I am so ready. I have actually been sick for 2 weeks, and this is the first day that I have felt like myself. So we have on some makeup, I can talk without coughing. It is time to talk fantasy. Are you ready? Let's do it. Starting off really quickly as a bit of a background, I am working on a high fantasy series, and I have been working on this series for quite some time. Took a little break, kind of figure out what was going on with it because it was not going like I wanted. That was back in 2019. Now I've come full circle and I'm ready to be working on it again, and I'm starting this time with the world building because I realized I am a world building nut. This is what I look for when I go to fantasy, is a very well thought out, thoroughly explored world that has some unique points that are different from ours, and I want that in my own writing. So I am going back to the very bare bones of this world, stripping away everything that I thought I knew about it, and just having fun creating. Now, let's see, it was 2 years ago. Yes, 2 years ago, I came out with a series on fantasy world building. It's a playlist right here on my channel. You can go find it. I'll link it up in the cards above. But I did an entire series of videos just on world building and on the process that I've kind of figured out for myself, and at that point was just really starting to delve into. And I created a workbook to correspond with it. Now the workbook is incomplete. The very last segment of it, I ended up not being able to finish because I ran out of time, and then I realized just how in-depth I would have to get in order to really flesh it out the way I wanted to. So I've actually left it incomplete, kind of left it up to you, the author, to figure out exactly how you want that last portion to go. But the way that I set up the workbook and the way that I set up the videos was to have 5 basic categories that I needed to explore, and to do them in an order that grows gradually more complex, from the simplest and easiest of the tasks to the most ridiculously long and effort-taking of all of them. The 5 categories were geography and topography, magic systems, all the fun stuff with that, fantasy races and creatures, who's inhabiting your world, the history of your world, all the things that have taken place that were major or minor depending on how in-depth you wanted to go, and the last was cultures. That's why I ended with cultures, is because it's the most complex. The reason that I set it up that way was so that it could build on itself. Like as you go through, you could refer to your past work, but it gets more complex, so you're building and adding new things to your world. So by the time you get to the cultures, you're drawing from where you were located geographically, what the magic system looks like, what people inhabit it, what creatures inhabit it, and what the history has been to lead up to this culture, in order to really bring out the most vibrant and lifelike fantasy cultures that you possibly could. I have been using this basic structure for my world building for Coastlander, which is the name of the project. I probably should have mentioned that earlier. The project official title is Coastlander. It's not going to be the title of the books or the series that I know of, but it's the old title and it's the easiest for me to remember, so that's what I'm using. It's what I called it before. I've been using this basic structure. I actually have a copy of the workbook, I think, somewhere buried deep in my notebooks. If I remember, I will try to throw in some clips here of what it looks like printed out. It's very simple, very easy. I threw in some sample work of some just like random made up stuff to kind of help make it easier. But I have found that this gradual progression in world building works, for me at least. And the nice thing about the workbook is that you can kind of go through and pick and choose what you want to work on, which is what I've been doing actually. This last week, this is the 3rd day this week that I have worked on writing. It has been so amazing. And the first day of the week, what I worked on was history, because that's what I was inspired to do. But now I'm back at geography at the very beginning of everything, figuring out the world, figuring out the topography, figuring out all of that. And so that's obviously what the video is about. And hopefully I'm going to be able to take you through these videos, through the workbook, through the process of world building as I am going through it, and showing you video footage of me actually doing it. So like today, we are working on geography and topography, so this can be some footage of me working on maps. And now I'm going to take you through what I am doing as far as like my checklist of ways of getting the geography figured out. The very first thing that I do when it comes to my geography and my topography and figuring all of that out is to go to Paint, yes, Paint, that old program on your computer, and just do a rough outline of what the geography is going to look like. And I do mean rough. Like I literally will take the pencil option and draw in what I think the continents and islands might look like, and then I color in the ocean and I'm done. Like it's that easy. It's just so simple. That's all. And oftentimes it's super random. Like I just go wherever it squiggles and oh, this is what it looks like. And it actually works as far as like the continents go. I don't think that would work for topography, but it works for continents. Then I move into the second stage, which is sketching. Now I do have a bit of an artist hand. I'm not an expert. I'm not actually that great, but I can draw outlines of continents and fill in some of the topography. And that's what I do. I get some paper, I get some pencils, and I just sketch out what I've just taken from the paint project. I'd go one continent at a time, and I just fill in what I think the topography is going to look like. Now, with this particular project, I actually, months ago, actually years ago at this point, I took random topographical elements like mountains, rainforests, rivers, box valleys, man coves, swamps. Like, I just threw out random topographical elements, put them in a hat, and literally just like picked them up and started laying them down, just to try and get out of my own head, because I ended up drawing very similar topography and geography to what I had done for years. I was like, I need something different. So I just threw random stuff literally on a map, and then I created this map. Now, obviously, I have refined it some since then, but that was what I started with, to kind of get some different elements in there. And it's honestly working really cool. And I'm going to talk more about the map itself and what my world outline looks like what the layout of the land is in this world, because I do want to talk about my books in this series of videos. I do want to talk about the world building itself and share what mine looks like. And I apologize that the camera is shaking. This camper, everything moves. I'm so sorry. Now, that's as far as I'm probably going to get for now, is up to the sketching stage and putting it all together and seeing what the topography looks like. I'm going to save the next 2 steps for after I've had a chance to figure out histories and cultures, because third and fourth steps are color coding the nations and the people groups. I'm going to save this for when I know more about the culture, so I know names and people groups and the history of how everybody's moved around, so I know where everybody is and what their names are and what they're like and stuff. This is also a good time for me to figure out what the natural resources are, which I usually do actually in the sketching stage. I'll figure out what the natural resources in the area are. Looking forward to a time when mankind will, civilize it and start digging into the resources. But I'll start color coding those as well. So what I'll do is I'll take the original map that I have, the just regular topography one, I'll make copies of it. And then each copy will have a different set of color coding that I just pencil over it with either national boundaries and people groups, or natural resources sketched out, or whatever you want to. Like, there's one that I even have one for where magical creatures live. So again, I haven't gotten to that part because I haven't gotten as far as like the people groups and stuff. I want to wait until I figured out a little bit more about the history and who's going to end up where, but eventually that's going to happen. And then the fourth and final step is the cities and the roads. And I'm definitely saving this like for the very, very end, because oh my gosh, I have to figure out language first, and I have to figure out, again, history and where everybody is and what roads might need to lead where and all the stuff. So that's going to be the very last thing. So we probably won't see that until like the end of the year, if I get to it by then. So what's next? Got the paint outline, got the basic sketches figured out. Now I go through with the natural resources and the topography, and I put all the continents together on one giant map. And that is kind of it for where I start and end with the topography, before I know cultures and history and language and things of that nature. It is important for me to know, like, if the magic system affects the topography, like if there's magic infused in nature, which in this particular series, spoiler alert, it is, just a little bit. It's gonna be fun. But that is important to know as well. So again, that's where the workbook, like, you kind of go back and forth between what you're working on now, what you've already worked on, and what you will be working on later. It's kind of like you jump around a lot, but the progression is still there. And that's how the videos are going to have to go. By the way, I will link the workbook, and I will link the playlist of the videos down in the description box below, and hopefully it'll give you some inspiration for your fantasy world building too. So now I'm going to talk just a little bit about my world, some of the complications that I've come up with, and some ways that I'm working around them. Because I decided to go a slightly different route than I normally do. So originally, with most of my worlds that I create, I envision them as full planets. And I have full continents, the size of the continents that we have. And I kind of envision that either there hasn't been full around the world travel yet, or if there has been, there's not a whole lot there. Maybe like there's mostly oceans or whatever. And that's what I originally had figured out for this whole thing. But I kept coming back to, I've got this west coast. And it feels like every other fantasy series saga out there has a west coast. Like, that's what we're working with the map. And I was inspired, you know what? Let's try something different. And this is where I came up with the 3 continents, and you'll see a picture of it here in a minute. Kind of what I'm working with. It probably won't end up looking entirely like this. But that's what I ended up working with, was trying to go with more of like a northern coast. And then all that. But what I did differently with this particular project that I've never done before is I decided to make this world a flat Earth. So an oval disc with a dome atmosphere, nothing underneath, just set up like that. Future editing me, just slipping in here real quickly to say that I had forgotten one very important element of the world building for this particular planet, and that was the equator is a small center at the very middle of this disk, and then things get progressively colder the farther out from it you go, so that the outer rim of this disk is completely frozen over. It'd be like going to visit the North or the South Pole. You can't fall off the end of the world, even though that would be fun. We're not doing that. But I decided to do that with this particular world because I thought it would add some interest to it. And already I'm finding some complications, because in our universe, right, in our galaxy, in our little solar system, we have planets revolving around the sun. That's how we get our days and our months and our years and so on. What does that look like if you have this flat disk with a dome atmosphere, like, and you have sun outside of the planet? Like, what does it look like? How would it work? And I'm tempted to just say, well, magic, and just skip it and move on. And there's a possibility that I could do that, but I kind of want to go the extra step, you know, because I feel like that is what's going to make this book stand out, make this series stand out, make this world stand out. So I'm thinking at this point I need to do some research, like a lot of research into how this kind of a world would actually work. And I feel like this is going to get very science fiction-y almost, but I mean, it's all speculative fiction, right? It's all spec fic. We can kind of mesh a little bit. It will not come through the novels as science fiction. It will come through the novels as a magical world. So no worries on that point. I'm definitely sticking more with magic on this point. But I do have to do some science fiction type research now. So what comes next? The next step for me is going to be moving into history, because I actually already have the magic system figured out. Systems, there's more than one. And I already have the fantasy races and creatures figured out. Now I will probably need to go back and brush up my magic system. So I may do an entire video just on magic systems, what I am working on in my novel, and how I came up with them. Let me know in the comments below if that's something you'd be interested in knowing about, more about the magic systems in my world and how I'm handling all of that. So once I have all this geography stuff figured out and I have it all pieced together, I'm going to move on to history. So that will probably be the next video. We're going to see. We're going to see. I do have a really good friend who is actually using my book's world as a chance to test out some map making program that she's working on. I actually don't remember what it's called. I'll try to link that in the description box below if I remember. But she has invested in that and wants to eventually make maps as like part of her author business. It's like, you know, offering to make maps for authors who, like me, just don't even want to mess with that as far as the technology side goes. So I'm really excited to do that, and maybe eventually I will share that. But since I'm so far out from actually writing these books, I'm a little hesitant to share that yet. So we'll see how that goes, and I will let you guys know. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed getting to do a little bit of a deep dive into fantasy world building with me. I had so much fun filming and actually getting in a real vlog and sitting down and talking fantasy world building. It just makes me feel so alive. I hope it did for you too, give you some inspiration. So if you did like this video, please be sure to hit the thumbs up, and if you aren't subscribed yet, then consider subscribing on the way out and hit that notification bell so you'll know when the next video comes up and we get to chat some more about fantasy world building. Anything you need to know about me, my books, any of the workbooks that I have created for authors, all that's in the description box below, as well as my social media links. I'm mostly active on Instagram, but sometimes I'm active on Facebook. I have some stuff there. And of course Pinterest, because that's most of what I've been doing while I was sick. It's just Pinterest binging for hours, because it's all my writing I could do. So I love you all. I hope you have an amazing rest of the week in writing. I will see you guys in my next video all about more fantasy world building. Bye!